Welcome to Forum. I'm Andrew Gilligan, and this is the topical debate show where the people ask the questions. And today the topic is Africa. President Obama has just visited a continent accustomed to blaming other people for its many problems and told it bluntly that Africa's future is up to Africans. The West, he said, was not responsible for child soldiers, the destruction of Zimbabwe and the corruption that has made Kenya, at independence, a country richer than South Korea, now far poorer. Was he right? Is bad government Africa's most important problem? And even if it is, have rotten wars been fueled by Western arms manufacturers? Have bad governments been propped up by Western aid budgets? Is, in fact, the West's focus on aid one of Africa's biggest problems? Even where African governments have reformed, are they permanently hobbled by the often unfair terms on which the West trades with them? Is fairer trade rather than aid the solution? And is America going to do anything about Africa's problems or just make speeches? To discuss these issues, a first-class panel. To my right, His Excellency Zed Kofi Grant Assilfi, Ghanaian Acting High Commissioner to the UK. Ghana, of course, was the country President Obama chose to make his recent speech. To his right, A.O. Johnson, a broadcaster and specialist on African affairs. To my left, Lord David Lee, a Labour peer, Vice President of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Africa. And to his left, Esther Stanford, Vice President of the Pan-African Reparation Coalition in Europe. Welcome to you all. Before we get going, time for me to announce that if you'd like to be part of our studio audience here in London, you can call our hotline on 0208 728 6472 or email us at forum@presstv.co.uk. Those details at the bottom of your screen now. And now to the first question. It's from Katerina Rosanova. Your question, Katerina.
Do you think Obama is right in saying that Africa should sort out its own problems rather than blaming the West?
A.O. Johnson.
I think, no, it's not right. The responsibility is a collective one. It's one that Africans themselves have to take responsibility for their own affairs naturally, but also the fact that Obama, the West, the United States, America, and all, Britain and all others should actually be able to show that some of the ills that have happened on the African continent, it's not just the Africans' faults. But also, I think Africans have to show above and beyond that they can actually govern, which they clearly have been shown to do so, and their ability to be able to do away with corruption, which is a factor which Obama spoke about, but more so about the fact that Africa needs to grow. And the only way they're going to be able to do so is for them to have equal partners. And the United States clearly is trying to show that they can and want to become a partner of Africa in recognition more so of the fact that Africa has got a strategic importance, and more so about the fact that Africa has got endless amount of raw materials, and the Chinese, who have been very, very active on the ground, have done extremely well, and the United States do not want to play second to that.
So what should Obama have? What should he have said, A.O. Johnson?
Well, I think he should have been slightly more clear, critical in the fashion that he did, but more so appreciative of some of the good practices that have come out of the continent, because there have been a lot of pluses. The African continent
Praise for Ghana?
Well, Ghana, clearly, because of their democratic credentials, they've been given a lot of brownie points and been rewarded with that visit. But more so, the fact that there are other countries in Africa who are growing, who are aspiring. You have South Africa, who is clearly a powerhouse, doing extremely well, growing very well. You've got Nigeria, that's doing well, the most populous nation on Africa. And you have other smaller bits in other countries. You've actually recently had Liberia, where we've had the first female president. And more so, we've got in Rwanda, where we've got more female MPs than male counterparts anywhere else in the world. So it just shows that Africa is growing, and it's to recognize and actually appreciate that. And I would like to have heard some bits of that coming out of Obama's mouth, really.
Esther Stanford, was there anything missing from Obama's speech you want to hear?
There was a lot missing, actually. I think there was no recognition of the fact that Africa as a continent and the countries of Africa have been actually trying to assert their own autonomy. It's not for want of trying why we haven't advanced further along the road. There was a lack of recognition of the continuing role of, international institutions, the World Trade Organization, the IMF, in actually contributing into some of the social economic conditions that many Africans in African countries are experiencing today, whether it's through the imposition of structural adjustment programs, whether it's about trade liberalization, whether it's about the neoliberal economic policies. And if we're talking, Io mentioned partnership, and yes, it would be good to see partnership, a true partnership between Africa as a continent and, the European Union as well as the United States. But partnership, on what terms? This can never truly be a true partnership, even in terms of what's happened around economic partnership agreements. There's been huge dissent, coming from, African countries, Caribbean countries, and Latin and Pacific countries because of the unfair terms. So really what we're seeing is an unequal partnership. We're expecting Africa to compete at a level that it's not able to because it's still, its feet is tied, its hands are still tied in a very real way.
Acting High Commissioner, quite a compliment that Obama chose Ghana for his speech, but is there anything you would have wanted to hear from him, or were you pretty happy with what he said?
I think I'm pretty happy with what he said. What he said, I believe, about Africa taking care of its own affairs is that he was telling us his own story. He said, look at all the odds that I faced, I took up my own, I did it with my own effort. I navigated, I used the advantages available to me, I took care of my own business, and here I am. So Africa can do the same, despite all the difficulties, despite all the strings and so on and so forth.
Is that right, though? I mean, clearly, African countries, yours included, still labour, however well or badly they're governed, still labour under enormous structural disadvantages, which make it incredibly hard for them to approach the levels of the West in prosperity.
Exactly. That's why Obama said that. You know all the problems, you know all the difficulties.
But wasn't it a cop-out of him to blame you for that? And blame Africa, I mean?
No, he wasn't blaming Africa. He said, okay, I'm aware of all the problems that Africa faces. I'm aware of the history. I'm aware of the difficulties. But from taking considering all the difficulties. So what do we do now? Now it's up to Africa itself to take stock of all these problems and find a way out. I believe it, that's what he was saying.
I mean, Ghana's one of the countries that's a long way along this road. It's had several democratic and free elections, civil society, relatively free media. How did you do it? What was the secret?
Well, actually, anytime I get this problem, anytime I get this question, my answer is that it's due to the fact that the leadership of the political parties, especially, were mostly lawyers who believed in the rule of law, and
some of the greatest tyrants in Africa were lawyers, though.
No, but you can't. It's rare that you have a collection of lawyers.
Was not Robert Mugabe a lawyer at one point?
But his opponent was not a lawyer, or even if he was a lawyer, he might not have believed in the rule of law. But in Ghana, all the top leadership of the parties were all lawyers. That's not the only thing. Ghanaians are very warm people. They are peace-loving people. They believe in the peaceful settlement of disputes and so on and so forth.
Does it help that you were the first African country, pretty much, to get independence from the colonial power?
Yes, because Ghana has always been
52 years, right?
In political opinion and in political demonstration. So we've been in a leadership role in the politics of Africa for a while.
Okay, I had a question.